Have you ever walked into a room and noticed someone who didn't say a word, didn't try to impress anyone, and yet somehow they were the one everyone noticed? There was no show, noise, or need for attention, just presence, a quiet kind of power, the kind that doesn't demand the spotlight but earns respect when it enters the room. That presence isn't about looks or loudness. It's about calm confidence. It's about how they carry themselves, treat others, and how at ease they seem, just being exactly who they are. It's the kind of magnetism that doesn't come from performance, but from alignment. And the best part? You don't need to become someone else to have it. You need to become more of the person you already are, at your best. In today's episode, we will explore 11 timeless habits, each inspired by the wisdom of Stoicism, that can help you build a quiet charisma, not by chasing attention, but by developing something far more powerful: inner strength, emotional clarity, and self-respect that others can feel even before you speak. This isn't about tricks or quick wins. It's about showing up fully without noise, yet making an impact that lingers. By the end of this episode, you'll realize that actual presence isn't something you push outward. It's something you cultivate inward until the world starts to feel it on its own. So take a breath, settle in, and let's begin. And if this message resonates with you, consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and tapping the bell. Hence, you never miss a new episode. This is your space for stillness, strength, and clarity that speaks volumes without ever needing to shout. Segment 1: The Power of True Independence. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to command respect without ever raising their voices? They don't boast. They don't chase praise. And yet, when they walk into a room, a quiet strength draws your attention. That strength is independence, not the rebellious kind, not the "I don't need anyone" kind, but the kind that says, "I know who I am, and I don't need external validation to feel complete." This type of inner strength is rare, and because it's rare, it's magnetic. In a world addicted to likes, shares, and constant affirmation, independence has become a quiet rebellion. People start to take notice when you stop performing for approval and no longer adjust your identity to please the crowd. True independence isn't about isolation, it's about alignment. It's about choosing your values and walking your path without apology. Paradoxically, that makes you more connected to others, not less, because when your self-worth isn't up for negotiation, you become someone others can trust. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." In modern terms, when you stop needing approval, you gain control. But let's be honest, independence is hard. It means standing firm when your choices aren't popular. It means walking alone sometimes. It means not having a cheer squad every time you choose the harder, right over the easier wrong. And yet, that quiet resolve, it speaks louder than any performance ever could. When you embody independence, your energy shifts. You don't need to convince people you're in control. They feel it. You don't need to say you're grounded. Your presence reveals it. And you don't need to compete for space in the world. You create your own. That's why this kind of confidence is unforgettable. Because it isn't flashy, it's not marketed, it's lived. In how you speak, in how you move, in how you treat others when no one is watching. And here's what makes it truly powerful. When your identity is rooted in your values, you stop fearing rejection because you're no longer playing someone else's game. Studies have shown that people who score high on self-determination and intrinsic motivation experience significantly lower stress levels and higher emotional resilience. Not because their lives are easier, but because their sense of self isn't constantly under threat. And that's the Stoic edge: a grounded life in an unstable world, a calm presence in a culture of noise. So how do you begin to cultivate this kind of quiet strength? It starts by asking hard questions. Am I living for others' approval? Or am I honoring what matters to me? Are my actions a reflection of who I truly am or who I think I'm supposed to be? Then it requires solitude, not loneliness, solitude. Time away from the noise to recalibrate. It's time to hear your voice again. Because when you remember who you are, you stop chasing what you're not. And here's the truth. The more you live in alignment, the less you need applause. Because peace becomes your applause. Integrity becomes your reward. This is what the world needs more of. Not louder opinions, but quieter power. No more influencers, but more inner authority. So if you're listening to this right now and feel like you've been trying to prove something to people who may never understand you, this is your sign to stop. You don't need to be louder, you need to be truer. Because the most attractive person in the room, he isn't always the one who gets noticed first. It's the one people remember long after they leave. Habit number 2, mastering the art of quiet elegance. What you project into the world doesn't always come from your voice. Sometimes the loudest form of power is presence. And here's the truth, in a noisy, overstimulated world where everyone's trying to be louder, faster, funnier, quiet becomes magnetic. The kind of quiet that doesn't shrink, but stands tall. That doesn't demand, but commands. This is the essence of quiet elegance. It's not about wearing a mask of perfection. It's about refining how you show up, not for validation, but for integrity. Not to perform, but to align. Have you ever noticed how rare it is to be in the company of someone who doesn't rush to speak? Yet every word they say feels intentional, grounded, and clear. That's not luck. That's discipline. It's what the Stoics called measured speech. Because words, like actions, reveal the state of your inner world. And someone who has cultivated stillness and is not at war with themselves doesn't need to win arguments. They don't react to be heard. They respond to be understood. Quiet elegance is also about holding yourself when no one's watching. It's not just posture or etiquette, the energy behind it. Do you act with care even when there's no audience? Do you listen with your whole attention, or are you just rehearsing your next reply? That gap between impulse and intention is where quiet power lives. And don't mistake restraint for weakness. Restraint is wisdom in motion. It's knowing that not every opinion needs to be voiced. Not every provocation deserves your energy. And that sometimes the most transformative thing you can do is pause. The world wants your reaction. Your silence teaches it patience. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more who is poor." This applies not just to possessions, but to attention, validation, and noise. When you no longer chase these things, your dignity rises. You don't need to chase the spotlight when your presence quietly lights the room. Elegance begins with restraint, but it blossoms through consistency, through how you move through stress without spreading it, how you carry the weight of responsibility without bitterness. Through the kindness you extend even when it's not returned. And the most powerful part? You don't have to announce any of this. People feel it. Over time, you'll notice something strange. The more grounded you become, the more others begin to mirror you. They lower their voices, they pause before reacting, they soften in your presence, not because you demanded it, but because your presence permitted them. And that's the ultimate Stoic art. Becoming so anchored in your values that your very way of being becomes an invitation for others to rise, breathe, and return to themselves. So if you ever doubt the impact of quiet elegance, remember this: still water runs deep. It may not make waves on the surface, but it shapes everything beneath. Let your calm be your calling card. Let your poise be your persuasion, not by force, but by example. Because true power doesn't raise its voice, it lowers the noise. Habit 3. The subtle power of scent. There's something quietly transformative about a person who carries themselves with intention, and nowhere is that intention more quietly powerful than how they smell. Fragrance is memory, it's emotion. It's the invisible signature you leave behind when you walk out of a room, and yet it's not about excess. True allure doesn't demand attention, it invites it. The Stoics knew that a life lived well is one lived with care, discipline, and deliberate presence. Scent is just another expression of that. A refined scent isn't a mask, it's a mirror. It doesn't scream for notice, it whispers, "I pay attention, I care about the details." And this isn't just about perfume or cologne. This is about grooming as a quiet discipline. Cleanliness is a form of self-respect. It's about the kind of hygiene that doesn't just keep you fresh, but makes others feel at ease in your presence. There's a subtle magic in someone who looks composed and smells quietly captivating, not overwhelming, but unmistakably intentional. We underestimate how deeply the olfactory sense connects to memory, emotion, and trust. Studies show that scent is more closely linked to memory than any other sense. A subtle, clean scent, the freshness of linen, the softness of sandalwood, or the trace of cedar and bergamot, can create an emotional imprint that outlives the moment. And what does that say about you? It says you're present, that you're not just moving through the world passively. You show up fully, even in the things people can't immediately see. The Stoics believed that your external state should reflect your internal clarity. That virtue begins with how you show up daily, starting with yourself. Seneca once advised, "Let your manner of life be serious, your dress simple, your speech composed, your demeanor the same." In other words, let who you are speak even when you're silent. That's what a well-chosen scent does. It's a silent signal of calm, presence, and self-awareness. Not arrogance, but alignment. A fragrance that aligns with your essence, fresh, woody, or subtly sweet, becomes a natural extension of your presence. It tells the world, "This is who I am," without ever needing to say a word. So what can you do? Start by refining your ritual. Choose a fragrance that feels like you, not to impress, but to express. Invest in clean habits that go beyond surface grooming. Care for your clothes, brush your hair, tend to your breath. Pay attention to the invisible elements that build trust and connection. Quiet charisma isn't built by being the loudest in the room. It's built by how people feel when you're around, and more importantly, how they remember you when you're gone. When you master the art of scent, you're not just wearing a fragrance, you're telling a story. One of inner calm, outer alignment, and deep respect for yourself and the space you share with others. And in that subtlety lies something unforgettable. Now, let's keep going. Habit 4, the habit of full presence. In a world saturated with distractions, there's something quietly magnetic about someone who is fully present. Not just physically present, but mentally, emotionally, and intentionally there. You can feel it. When someone offers you their full attention, it's like the world's noise fades, and what's left is something rare, genuine connection. And the truth is, we all crave it. We've all felt the sting of speaking to someone who's only half listening. Their eyes flicker to their phone, their mind drifts elsewhere, and though they're there in body, their presence is missing. It leaves us feeling small, as if our words don't matter. But the opposite, when someone locks eyes with you, listens without interruption, and responds with genuine curiosity, it's unforgettable. You feel heard, valued, respected. That's the quiet power of presence. It doesn't demand attention, it earns it. And it's not about perfection, it's about intention. It's resisting the reflex to check your phone every 5 minutes. It's letting go of rehearsing your following line while someone else speaks. It's immersing yourself in the moment and responding like nothing else matters more. The Stoics understood this well. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present, not to punish the past or fear the future, but to reclaim your mind, emotions, and power right now. Because when you're present, you command more than just attention. You command trust." Presence turns ordinary conversations into moments of meaning. It elevates the people around you. It makes you the kind of person others naturally lean into. But here's the thing, being present isn't passive, it's active. It's a decision to quiet the mental noise. It's choosing to notice the subtle cues, the shift in someone's tone, the pause between their words, the way the energy in the room changes. This kind of awareness doesn't just make you more attentive. It makes you more intelligent, more emotionally attuned, more deeply human. And that, in itself, is rare. So how do you build it? Not through grand gestures, but through daily mindfulness. Whether speaking to a friend, eating a meal, or just walking outside, give that moment your full attention. Listen more than you talk. Pause before you respond. And when you do speak, speak with purpose, not performance. Because presence isn't loud, it's still, it's powerful without needing to prove anything. It creates a space where others feel safe to be seen. And in that space, real connection happens. Most people don't remember exactly what you said, but they always remember how you made them feel. When you are fully present, you leave behind more than words. You leave behind presence itself. And that impression stays. In a noisy world, be the person who listens, who shows up, not just physically, but fully. The kind of person whose calm draws others in. Not because you're seeking attention, but because your quiet focus makes others feel significant. Presence is rare. That's why it's powerful. And when you live it, not just preach it, you become the kind of person who doesn't just move. Habit 5, the silent power of mystery. But here's the part that most people overlook. True mystery isn't about withholding, it's about depth. It's about being the kind of person who, when they finally speak, you listen. Not because they demand attention, but because their words feel earned, intentional, rare. And that rarity, it makes you magnetic. In a world trained to overshare, those who carry themselves with quiet confidence, who don't rush to explain every choice or justify every move, stand out without ever needing to shout. They invite curiosity without begging for it. They create space for wonder, for respect, for slow discovery. And if you look closer, the Stoics have always known this. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, not the color of your tweets, not the volume of your explanations, but the depth of your inner world." When you stop broadcasting everything you think and feel, something changes. People stop seeing you as noise and start recognizing you as presence. Because mystery, when rooted in authenticity, creates gravity. People lean in. They wonder what you're about. They watch not just what you say, but how you move and react, how you live. That's when your life becomes your loudest message. Your boundaries speak volumes. Your restraint becomes strength. Your stillness becomes a signal. And the truth is, we all crave this kind of presence. Not someone who overwhelms us with their story, but someone who reveals themselves. Slowly, thoughtfully, and with intention. Someone who makes you earn access, not because they're playing games, but because they respect their depth enough not to hand it over cheaply. So let me ask you, do you share to connect or to be validated? Are you showing your soul or selling it in pieces for applause? Because here's the paradox. The less you seek attention, the more attention your presence commands. The less you explain yourself, the more powerful your decisions appear. The less you open every door, the more sacred the parts you do reveal become. The mystery isn't distance, it's dimension. And the more layers you carry within you, the more meaningful it becomes when someone gets to see just one. So maybe the challenge isn't to be louder, Maybe it's to be richer in silence, substance, and spirit. To become someone whose words carry weight because you've practiced speaking less and meaning more. Someone whose stillness feels stronger than most people's noise. And yes, that kind of person is rare. But in a world desperate to be seen, maybe rare is precisely what we need more of. So today, let your silence speak. Let your mystery invite, not repel. Let your presence tell the story your words never could. Because when you live with integrity, restraint, and depth, you don't have to prove anything. You just are. And that, my friend, is unforgettable. Habit 6. The quiet power of cultural intelligence. It's a strange paradox. The most magnetic person in the room often listens in a world constantly shouting for attention. The one who doesn't interrupt to impress, but observes to understand. Cultural intelligence is not about proving you've traveled the world. It's about how much of the world lives in you. It's how you speak without raising your voice. How do you hold space in conversations, not by dominating them, but by deepening them? And that, right there, is where the Stoics come in. Because Stoicism teaches us to endure life and interpret it with clarity, to step outside our minds long enough to consider the thoughts, the truths, and the pain of others. Seneca once wrote, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." But you can't offer kindness if you don't first offer understanding, and you can't understand if you're too busy preparing your following rebuttal. Cultural intelligence begins when the ego takes a back seat. It shows up in little things. When you ask someone what book changed their life instead of what they do for a living. When you pause, not to disagree, but to ask, what made you feel that way? When you travel, do not collect photos, but gather perspective. And it changes the way people feel around you. They stop posturing, they stop performing. Because you're not judging them, you're witnessing them. And in a time where opinions are weaponized and outrage is a currency, cultural intelligence is quite resistant. It's choosing presence over pride, curiosity over certainty, and grace over being right. Think about it. Who are the people who leave a lasting impression on you? Is it the loudest person in the meeting, or the one who made you feel seen without saying much at all? That's the power of stillness, of paying attention, not just to words, but to silences between them. And when you practice this awareness, you become someone others trust with their truth, not because you promised to fix them, but because you didn't try to change them. Cultural intelligence isn't about tolerating differences. It's about being enriched by them. It's about walking into a room and asking yourself, what can I learn from this moment? Instead of, how can I win this moment? You want to be someone who adds weight to the moment without making it heavy. Someone whose voice doesn't need volume to carry wisdom. Someone who doesn't need to be impressive because they're already impactful. So ask yourself this today. Am I willing to be the kind of person who listens before I speak, who feels before I analyze, who reflects before I react? Because that is cultural intelligence. Not loud, but lasting. Not flashy, but unforgettable. It's not about being everywhere, but fully present wherever you are. Habit 7. The quiet pulse of compassion. In a world that rewards hustle, applause, and attention, there is something quietly magnetic about those who lead with kindness. Compassion doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't demand the spotlight, but its presence is unforgettable. And when you embody it, honestly and consistently, you become the kind of person others feel safe around, not because you fix their problems, but because your presence doesn't add to their burden. While others compete to be the loudest voice in the room, compassion makes you the calmest. And that calm is powerful. It soothes, it connects, it invites. Because when people feel seen without being judged, something rare happens. They begin to trust. And that trust, it doesn't come from charisma. It doesn't come from clever words or credentials. It comes from how you make others feel, especially when hurting, confused, or lost. In those moments, compassion becomes your quiet superpower, a soft tone. There was a thoughtful pause, a willingness to listen. That's what makes people remember you. The Stoics understood this deeply. While many associate Stoicism with cold logic or emotional distance, its true essence was never about indifference. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." And being a good person, to the Stoic, meant leading with clarity and care. Compassion, in its purest form, isn't a weakness. Its strength is under control. It's understanding another's pain without losing your balance. It's showing up even when there's nothing to gain. But let's be honest, compassion can feel inefficient in a world shaped by urgency and ego. It doesn't consistently deliver fast results. It doesn't earn applause. But here's what it does do. It builds something unshakable. It builds connection. Every act of compassion, no matter how small, plants a seed. You may not see it grow. You may not even know it took root. But over time, those seeds bloom into trust, respect, and something far more meaningful than momentary validation. So, what does it look like in practice? It means slowing down when someone's voice trembles. It means staying patient when someone else is losing theirs. It means offering grace, not because they earned it, but because that's who you are. The strongest people are not those who never feel anger. They are the ones who can feel it and still choose understanding. They are the ones who can hold tension without needing to dominate it. Because true strength is not reactive, it's responsive, thoughtful, rooted in presence. And when you begin to embody that kind of presence, something shifts. You start showing up differently in your relationships. You listen more, you speak less, you pause before judging. And in that pause, that sacred, silent pause, compassion lives. It begins with yourself. Because here's the truth no one talks about enough. You cannot give what you don't have. You must first become one for yourself, to be a steady presence for others. Be patient with your healing, gentle with your progress, forgiving for your flaws. The way you treat your pain will shape how you hold space for someone else's. So start with small rituals. Speak to yourself with kindness. Rest when you're tired, not when you've earned it. Set boundaries without guilt. And when you mess up, because you will, choose compassion over shame. Again and again. You don't have to be perfect to be powerful. You have to be present, and presence is rare. That's why it's unforgettable. In a world overflowing with noise, be the person who listens. In a world that races, be the one who stays. In a world that demands answers, be the one who understands. Not because you're trying to be seen, but because that's who you are, even when no one is watching. That's the pulse of compassion, not loud, not flashy, but steady and strong. And the world doesn't just need more cleverness, it needs more of that, more of you. Habit 8, laughter and joy. In a world that glorifies intensity, the ones who carry lightness become unforgettable. There's something magnetic about a person who can smile without a reason and find something worth laughing about, even in a storm. Laughter isn't just noise, it's medicine. The universal connector breaks the tension, dissolves the ego, and softens even the most brutal truths. And when you notice joy in life's ordinary corners, you become someone others want to be around. Not because you're loud, but because your presence brings relief. It's refreshing, it's warm, life is hard. Everyone you meet is carrying something. But when you can still laugh, truly laugh, it signals something rare, resilience, and not the showy kind, but the quiet, grounded one that says, "I've been through enough to know what matters." Joy, in this way, becomes a form of wisdom. The Stoics understood this. Despite their reputation for seriousness, they believed deeply in emotional mastery, not suppression, but control. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Choosing humor when things go wrong is not denial, it's strength. It shows your emotions don't own you, you own them, and that control is robust. But there's more. Humor builds trust. Think of your closest friendships. How many were constructed through shared laughter? There's a deep kind of safety in someone who can laugh at life's absurdities, even at themselves. It makes them human, approachable, real. But this habit isn't about becoming the funniest person in the room. It's about being the kind of person who sees life clearly, its pain and beauty, and still finds space to smile. It's not about avoiding hardship, but refusing to be defined by it. So, how do you build this habit? Start by noticing. Every day, life offers micro moments of joy, a comment, a memory, a ridiculous mistake. Don't brush past them. Linger, laugh, let yourself enjoy them. Share a lighthearted thought with someone. Let your joy be contagious. When others see you, don't take yourself too seriously. They'll relax around you, and that's when the connection begins. Surround yourself with people who bring out this energy in you, people who remind you who you are when the world gets heavy. Joy spreads, and when you become the one who shares it freely, you create a space where others feel lighter. Just by being near you, ask yourself, have I allowed joy into my daily life, or have I been wearing seriousness like armor? Because there's strength in laughter, especially when things aren't perfect. It shows you can move through life's turbulence with grace. That's a quiet kind of charm, one that leaves a lasting impression, not because you tried to impress anyone, but because you offered them a reason to breathe easier. And here's the secret. People don't remember every word you say. They remember how you made them feel. If you can carry laughter and warmth into the room with you, without performing, without pretending, you'll find that silent charisma follows you everywhere. You'll become unforgettable, not because you demanded attention, but because your joy made the moment feel better for everyone. And maybe that's the point. Habit 9. The art of self-respect through care. It's easy to overlook, but how you treat yourself when no one's watching sets the tone for every room you'll ever walk into. You can't fake the kind of presence that comes from inner alignment. You can't Photoshop energy, and you certainly can't outsource peace. That's why self-care isn't a luxury, it's leverage. It's not about spa days or green smoothies, though those have their place. It's about self-respect in action. Repeated, quietly, consistently. It's choosing to move your body when you'd rather scroll. It's cooking an authentic meal instead of skipping dinner. It's going to bed when your ego says, grind harder. It's not glamorous, but that's what makes it powerful, because the people who radiate strength aren't trying to. They live in alignment with what they value, and that energy is contagious. Self-care, in its deepest form, is about returning to the center. It's where Stoicism meets modern life. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his soul. But you only find that refuge if you maintain it like a sacred place." And that maintenance starts with how you treat yourself every single day. It begins with awareness. Ask yourself honestly, what do I feed my body, my mind, my attention? Am I reinforcing the person I want to become, or drifting into survival mode because it's easier? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. You can't hate yourself into a better version. You can't criticize yourself for clarity. You evolve by respecting your needs and not ignoring them. The Stoics never advocated for self-neglect. They warned against indulgence, but they also knew that a strong soul needs a strong vessel. Seneca trained both mind and body. Epictetus taught discipline not as punishment, but as devotion. In today's world, discipline looks different. It's turning off the phone when your nervous system begs for stillness. It's saying no to another commitment because you're already stretched too thin. It's sitting with your feelings instead of suppressing them with distraction. And it's hard, but it's worth it. Because what happens when you start honoring your boundaries? Your energy returns, your clarity sharpens, and suddenly people around you notice something has changed, even if they can't name it. That's the paradox of self-care. The better you treat yourself, the less you need external validation. You stop performing, you start existing, fully, calmly, undeniably, and that makes you magnetic. But let's be clear, this isn't about perfection. You will slip, you will overwork, undersleep, say yes when you say no, and that's okay. The point isn't flawless consistency. The fact is returning again and again, because every return strengthens the message you're sending yourself. I'm worth the effort. Over time, that belief becomes identity, not in a loud, boastful way, but in a way that grounds you. People feel it in your posture, your tone, your patience, your silence. That's what Stoicism looks like in the 21st century. Not detachment, but depth. Not coldness, but calm. It's refusing to abandon yourself in a world that constantly tells you to chase, prove, and do more. Proper self-care is rebellion, not against others, but against your tendency to forget your worth. And when you start treating your time, your body, and your mind as sacred, not occasionally, but habitually, you will notice something profound. You no longer crave validation from the world, because you've already given it to yourself. So ask yourself, what's one small promise you can keep today? One gentle way you can return to the center, not to fix yourself, but to remember yourself. You don't need to become someone else. You need to come back home. And the world will notice, quietly, without words, just like all real strength does. Habit 10. Emotional intelligence and social awareness. There is a calm magnetism to someone who doesn't just hear you, but truly understands you. Someone who doesn't try to dominate a room with volume, but elevates it with presence. That is the power of emotional intelligence. It doesn't shout, it doesn't interrupt, it doesn't need a spotlight. Because real influence doesn't come from demanding attention, but from making people feel seen. You can walk into a crowded room and say nothing, but your presence can shift the entire energy, not because you want to control the room, but because you understand it. Emotional intelligence is the habit of reading what isn't said. It's in the micro expressions, the body language, the unspoken tension in the air. It's when someone says they're fine and you know they're not. And instead of probing, fixing, or lecturing, you stay with empathy, with awareness, with silence that feels safe instead of heavy. That separates those who speak well from those who connect deeply. Epictetus once said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The emotionally intelligent person doesn't just react. They respond, deliberately, thoughtfully. They don't allow other people's chaos to become their own. They've mastered the pause, that sacred moment between stimulus and response. And in that pause, that's where your power lives. Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and felt drained but didn't even speak that much? It's not always about words. It's about the emotional weight others place on you. And if you're not aware, you carry it. But when you're grounded in your awareness, you learn to hold space without absorbing everything. You learn to listen, not to reply, but to understand, to observe, not to judge, but to discern. And here's the paradox. The more self-aware you become, the more socially aware you naturally are. Because when you're no longer preoccupied with how you're being perceived, you're free to perceive others more clearly. You start noticing the energy you bring into spaces. Are you calming the room or charging it with tension? The Stoics weren't emotionless. They were emotionally disciplined. They knew that true strength wasn't in suppression, but in self-regulation. And that discipline, it becomes grace. You enter conversations with curiosity, not control. You give others space to speak, not because you lack insight, but but because you understand timing is as powerful as wisdom. That's what draws people in. There is no need to be right, but a commitment to be real. In a world of noise, quiet presence is rare, and people will notice. They may be unable to describe what it is about you, but they'll feel safer around you, more open, more at ease. You become a mirror that reflects peace, not perfection. Emotional intelligence isn't about getting it right every time. It's about being fully present when it matters. And social awareness isn't about becoming someone else to fit in. It's about knowing when to speak up, when to fall back, and when your silence says more than any clever remark. So here's a question worth asking. Do people feel lighter or heavier after they've been around you? Do they feel heard or just replied to? You don't need to be the loudest voice in the room to leave a lasting echo. You need to be real, present, and deeply aware. Ultimately, this habit becomes less about behavior and more about being. The person who knows how to navigate emotional storms without sinking. The person who can be still without withdrawing. The person who can listen without losing themselves. That's who we remember, not because they tried to impress us, but because they made us feel understood. And in this loud, chaotic world, that's a rare kind of power. So if this resonates with you, take it with you, practice it. Could you share it? And watch what happens when your presence starts speaking louder than your words. Habit 11, consistency and reliability. There are few qualities as quietly magnetic as consistency. In a world where promises are casually made and easily broken, being the person who follows through, who shows up, even when it's inconvenient, sets you apart in the most powerful way. Not because you broadcast your reliability, but because others can feel it. And what people think, they remember. Trust isn't built through grand gestures, it's built in the unnoticed, the uncelebrated, the everyday. A text returned when promised. A commitment honored even when no one's watching. A steady hand when others panic. People may not articulate it, but they crave stability. When they know that you mean what you say, that you'll show up without needing reminders or recognition, you become someone they gravitate toward, not for entertainment, but for grounding. That's the essence of Stoicism, not chasing applause, but becoming so deeply aligned with your values that you live them without fanfare. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." And that's the thing. When you become consistent in your values, presence, and effort, you don't need to convince anyone. You become. Reliability is not perfection. It's presence. It's resilience. It's choosing to be the kind of person others can lean on, even when life is heavy. And in that choice, day after day, you become magnetic. Not because you're loud, but because you're unwavering. But here's something most don't realize. Consistency begins not with others, but with yourself. It's how you speak to yourself. How do you follow through with the promises you whisper in private? How you get up and do what you said you would before the world watched? That internal alignment is where true confidence is born. Not the kind you have to shout about, but the kind that radiates silently. The kind that fills a room before you even say a word. Your nervous system begins to trust you when you start keeping promises to yourself, even the small ones. You stop second-guessing, you stop seeking validation. Because deep down, you know, you show up, and in a world of noise, that silent self-trust becomes your superpower. This is where consistency becomes more than just a habit. It becomes your identity. You're no longer someone who tries to be disciplined. You are disciplined. You don't try to be reliable. You are. That shift isn't dramatic, it's subtle, but it changes everything. Think about someone in your life who's consistent. Chances are they're also someone you respect deeply. Maybe you don't even know why. You feel safer when they're around. That's what reliability does. It calms the room. It earns trust before words are even spoken. And if you've struggled with consistency, let me tell you this. It's not about willpower, it's about rhythm. Start small, pick one promise, just one, and keep it. Could you do it for a week, then 2, then a month? Let your actions stack like bricks, one layer at a time, until you realize you've built a foundation no one can shake. Emotional consistency is part of this too, being calm, predictable, grounded, not boring, but in a way that others can count on, in a way that makes people feel safe when the world is chaotic. That's the kind of presence that lingers long after the conversation ends. In the final stretch of this episode, let's reflect on the power of showing up, not just for others, but for yourself. Let's reject the pressure to impress and embrace the quiet strength of follow-through. Because ultimately, it's not what we say that defines us. It's what we do, repeatedly, consistently. As we close, remember, silent charisma is built, not bought. It's not about charm or flash or force. It's about rhythm, integrity, self-respect. It's about becoming someone who doesn't need to chase attention because your life already speaks for you, loudly, powerfully, quietly. So what would happen if starting today, you became the person you've been waiting to become? That's the invitation, and it begins right here, right now, with your next quiet step forward. Stay grounded, stay true, and as always, stay stoic. So, take a breath. In a world that often rewards noise, choose the strength of stillness. You don't need to be the loudest to be remembered. You don't need to seek attention to be deeply respected. Throughout this episode, we explored 11 quiet habits that speak louder than words. From cultivating calm confidence to building cultural intelligence, from emotional resilience to being someone people can rely on, you've seen how power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, and in that whisper is where presence lives, where dignity resides, where the most magnetic people in the room say very little, but somehow you feel everything. Because when you live with intention, when you walk your values instead of preaching them, you stop performing and start inspiring. It's not about being perfect, it's about showing up consistently, quietly, authentically. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." And that's your invitation today, not to imitate but to embody, not to impress but to align, not to chase admiration, but to earn quiet respect. You don't need to change who you are. You only need to come home to the deepest part of who you've always been. So as you move through the rest of your day, ask yourself, which of these habits already lives in me? And which one am I ready to plant quietly today? The most minor shift, done consistently, can reshape your presence and your legacy. And now, I'd love to hear from you. What's one quiet habit you're ready to embrace, and why? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if this episode brought you clarity, could you not keep it to yourself? Tap like to help others find it. Hit subscribe to walk this journey together, and turn on the bell so you never miss an episode. Until next time,